Right. Well, thank you for those that jumped into their quizzes and got that done. And the end of this session, you're going to have, I think, and Kathy, you might need to confirm this, a little assignment to do. So we've probably got to have some time at the end set aside for us to explain that.
Confirmed. Yes, thank you.
Good. Okay. So we're starting to get into more of the safe system assessment thinking, and especially around the road environment and road characteristics. So let's jump into module 2, and just as you beautifully did last time, pop your questions, comments into the chat, and we'll get to them as we go. And don't forget to count your wallies, of course. I'll be there for a little longer than the 40km/h shooting across the screen. Okay, we're going to go into kinetic energy thresholds in a bit more detail. We started talking about that with using the Usain Bolt analogy and delving into different crash types. But we're going to go a little bit further into that. We're going to look at intersections and what aligns highly with safe system principles and what doesn't. And then we're going to look at mid-block location. Sorry, I haven't got my pen going up to. So mid-block, what do we mean by mid-block? Mid-block is everything between intersections. That's the term for it. Okay, so let's jump straight into intersections, and not long into this, we're going to give you a little task to have a think about. And so that'll be one opportunity to have a stretch. We'll probably give you another one. So Monash University Accident Research Centre a while back came up with some principles for sort of intersection thinking or align with safe system principles. And the first few they've got there, so fewer vehicles and fewer intersections. They're quite interesting, aren't they? Like, because that's usually outside of the realm of what we have within our scope as those that manage, design and operate a road system. They're dealing with the exposure. Exposure, aren't they? So remember, we spent some time at the end of last session talking about exposure times likelihood times severity. And that's what we're going to be really honing in on. But if you can reduce vehicles and reduce the number of intersections, we're reducing the exposure to crashes. Less people are exposed to that crash in that area. Then we go to fewer conflict points per intersection, and that is a likelihood reducer. Now, this one will probably confuse a few people as we go a bit further on, because a lot of people want to say that's less exposure to crashes because there's few conflict points. But in the context of a safe system assessment, we will talk about that as likelihood. The number of vehicles or people crossing or the like, that's the exposure. How many conflict points they've got across through or the like, that is a likelihood factor. Then we get into the biomechanics of injury, and we're talking about getting the forces within crashes within these levels. And you're talking about that 90-degree crash, 50 km/h or less. If you can get more angle on that, there's generally more energy that can be handled. I mean, that's sort of back to your year 10 physics, maybe year 11 physics probably. And any of you remember vectors from back then? So you've got, if you sort of, I'll just do simple diagram, you've got that. But then if you're able to crash like that, we get more out into the environment. And that's, that makes sense, doesn't it? If you crash on those angles, you sort of bounce off a little bit. And so there's more energy transferred in that one than that one, essentially. If we go the other way around, when we're crashing more like that, what we're activating in the crash is actually the crumple zone, airbag, seatbelt, and all these frontal crash features of passenger vehicles. So while the energy is, more in terms of that it's not bouncing off, we get those significant benefits from those features of the vehicle. Then we're talking about vulnerable road users, and we're aiming at 30 kilometers per hour or below for those. And if you can't meet these combinations, we need to reassess how this is all operating and what can be done. So they're just sort of some high-level principles I just wanted to start with. And I have a variety of these sort of tables. You saw that colored graph that I put up last session. That's a really useful one when you're doing your assessment. But sometimes you need to make a bit of judgment call on the forces based on all of this information So there's some more here for passenger vehicle crashes. And you can see that around the 60 for where we can get off that 90-degree angle. Now that's from ChemX or XChemX, which is, it's like it stands for the Kinetic Energy Management Model. And it's sort of software that you can estimate these crash forces. Now, you as a safe system assessor are not going to need to be that precise. Okay, so you don't need to worry about, the fact that it's from XChemX or that you're going to have to use it. You're generally gathering an idea of the severity of the crash at these angles, speeds, and the vehicles and road users involved. And so even like with an new intersection like this, you don't need to be this precise either. I mean, CAD software will sort of spit this out very easily, but you can just sort of say, well, okay, that's actually that's about a right angle, isn't it? That's we're talking around a right angle for that. So we're thinking about 50 for that crash type or below is what we should be targeting. This one's got much more angle on it. So we could be talking about 60 or below for that side. And maybe this other one will stick to 50 as well because it's sort of that right angle. So, that's the kind of level you're looking at. I do want to remind you, though, of secondary crashes at intersection. And when vehicles collide at an intersection, well, first of all, they very rarely collide this neatly. But if they did, the mass would go out that way. What usually happens is all sorts of chaos. And that is vehicles, trying to avoid, hitting the front, spinning off, sometimes, hitting it, but there's different angles of it. And then there's a whole lot of mechanics in there around, are they braking, are they not, and size of vehicles and the like. But the Centre for Automotive Safety Research at the University of Adelaide did analyse a huge number of intersection crashes that did occur and looked at the secondary impacts that caused death and serious injury. And maybe the study didn't need to be done because it's pretty kind of obvious maybe, but we know that these are the areas where the majority of those secondary impacts were when you reorientate all the intersections to this axis. You do get some of those other clip off strange positions that they end up. So we're thinking about those energies and what we can do, and a whole lot of good things associated with the exposure, the likelihood, and the severity. I think it's time to get you to start doing some thinking. And this one is going to be an exercise where you're going to look at this intersection and you're going to redesign it to eliminate death and serious injury, or come as close to that as we can. I'll talk you through this intersection so you get a good feel for it, and then I'm going to put some constraints on you. So what we have here is a major arterial highway, and it's got a 70km/h speed limit. We've got a side road here with a 50km/h speed limit. These are service roads. They're multi-directional, two-directional service roads. This is like a drainage structure, sort of water drains out to this sort of reserve area. This is a shared user path. It's a bus stop there. It's residential area mainly. Down the road here's a about maybe 400 meters is a school. The main highway carries 20,000 vehicles a day. Side road 2,000 vehicles a day. What else can I tell you? That's pretty good. I mean, down the road, probably maybe 500 meters, set of traffic lights down this way, and probably a kilometre or two down the road the other way, there's another set of traffic signals. Here it is from the ground. You can see the side road, bus stop over there. What else? So you got a right turn lane in here. You can see there's a median, it's got lighting. Let's have a look from the other direction, I suppose. There you go. You can see there the drainage structure-y thing there. Shared user path over there that comes in. So your task here is to have a think about what you want to change here to eliminate fatal and serious injuries at this location going forward. Now I'm going to give you a $3 million budget. I like it. You can have 3.5 today. $3.5 million, and you can't close the intersection. So I know you were thinking about that. It's good thinking. However, community consultation's been done. It's been decided you can't close that intersection. Third one is you're operating in your current political, organizational, community framework. So you've got to, if you're proposing something highly radical, you would need to be able to give us a little idea of how that might happen. Now, some of you are probably going, well, I don't know how much stuff costs, and $3.5 million sounds like a lot of money. Well, I'm going to offer this special service that is the instant cost estimator. And so you can simply type in what you're thinking of and just put dash cost ? And I will give you a cost for that pretty much straight away. And so what I want you to do is come up with a treatment or a suite of treatments, but it's not that easy. I want you to categorize everything you're suggesting into either changing the exposure to crashes. So that's going to be stopping a number of people or vehicles being exposed to those crashes. The likelihood of crashes, so reducing the chance that a crash will happen, or the severity of crash, or a combination. So let me give you an example. You might say lighting improvements. Okay, now you don't know anything about how it looks at night and anything like that, so it'd be a bit silly to do that. But you go lighting improvements, and then in brackets afterwards, L for likelihood. Because we know that lighting reduces the chance of crashes, right? People can see more at night. They know where the intersection is, and they can see others, and they can see pedestrians crossing the line. But we know that does nothing for the severity of crashes. There might be some, some individual crashes that would have been more severe, but in general, we know that you can very much crash at the same speed you would have with or without the lights. So it's reducing the chance of crash. So it's unlikely to reducing. Okay, that was an example. But yeah, so you can pop down those. So we're going to give you a bit of time to have a think about this. And then you're just going to type it into the chat when you're ready. Okay.
Question, Ken, are the traffic volumes each way or combined?
Each way. Oh, sorry. We're saying the total traffic for this road is 21,000. So I suppose that would be each way. So no, I think that would be combined. So I don't know exactly what they are, 11,000 one way or whatever it is like that, and the distribution of it. But yeah, combined, if we take it that way, combined lanes or carriageways.
And so we've got some comments in already, just checking. So we've got, like, if you put in traffic lights here, would that reduce the exposure?
No.
No.
So
okay.
We will talk about that a bit, but to change the exposure, you're going to have to somehow change the number of vehicles or people that are exposed to the crash potential. And we'll get into that though.
Okay. All right. Well, your cost estimating services are there. So we haven't had anyone up looking for cost estimates. What would traffic lights cost though, just out of interest?
3 million.
3 million. Wow. Okay. And what about a roundabout?
Roundabout. Well, meeting the Australian Guide to Road Design requirements for roundabout will be 8.7 million. And we're getting a good deal because we've got that land.
That's a good deal. Okay. All right. So that's out of budget. Scratching my head now. What do we do?
Well, lots of options. I'll let people ponder that for a bit. But yeah, if you want a cost estimate, let us know.
All right, here we go. Pedestrian overpass. What would that cost?
Pedestrian overpass, 5 million. The DDA requirements on it, just we have to eat too much land. We have to buy too much land.
Okay. What about raised pavement and signals cost?
3 point. Well, it depends what we're raising. Raising the whole intersection, 3.6, 7, 3.7. Raising just parts of it, 3.4.
Are there existing traffic lights north and south of this location?
There are. Yep.
Okay. And what else? Okay, if we were to widen the road, add an entry lane for right turn out of T intersection, what would that cost?
So like a seagull treatment. Yeah, 3 million to do a sort of, we can do something with 3 million in that. Now, I'm seeing some people putting some stuff in, but not telling me whether it's exposure, likelihood, or severity.
Uh-huh. So an E, S, or L is good. Yep.
An E, an S, or an L with next to each of the things, or more than one.
What about, this is an interesting one, a shared path underpass adjacent to the drain?
It's a good one. It would cost. Sorry, it would cost.
I just saw traffic lights means likelihood. That's what I saw. But anyway,
you're right. Adjacent to the drain, yeah, 4 million at least. It's a bit of a challenge, and there's some requirements associated with these sorts of underpasses and bits and pieces. Draining, getting water out, lighting.
Drainage. Okay, good. Well, I think we're getting lots of responses in with the S, E, or L in there. Hold on. Does the service lane exit at traffic lights further south or down?
No, it has an opening though, just a free opening, so you can access it from other spots.
Okay, good. I think. Can I give prizes, Ken?
Of course, Kathy. You're in the prize pit.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot. I haven't seen this one before, and I am fascinated with dragon teeth. So I'm going to give one to, just because it's never been suggested before, dragon teeth at intersection approach.
Where was that? And did they say that was exposure, likelihood, or severity?
Severity. So
okay. Yeah.
I can't. Was it this group? I have some feelings about dragon's teeth, but anyway, that's all right.
Oh, please! I'm always interested in Kathy's feelings about stuff. This is.
Let me tell you about.
I'm going to draw dragon's teeth on the approach to this intersection. For those who don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Dragon's teeth are a part of perceptual countermeasures. And what are your thoughts on them, Kathy?
Yeah, so Bob's just asking what dragon teeth are, but that's good. They're popping up a lot. And I think it's an attempt, isn't it?
You're saying that there's maybe a more fundamental underlying issue that they're trying to cover. Are you particularly thinking about the ones down Bell Street?
Yes.
Outside the 7-Eleven?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. But yeah, good. Okay. So South Australia don't have dragon's teeth or raised safety platforms in South Australia. Would that be right? Are there any raised safety platforms in SA, Ken?
There are.
Oh, there are. Oh, okay. We'll have to take you on a tour, Bob. All right, how are we going? I think we're good. We've got lots of responses in. Loving the participation. Thank you, everybody.
Actually, I may have to eat my words there. Do we have a raised intersection, a good raised intersection in South Australia? Do we have raised safety platforms as such? I have to think about that.
Okay. All right.
Okay. I've been reading.
Was the speed along there 80?
It was 70.
70. Okay.
Oh,
wow. Sorry. Mark's response just came through. Whew. How good's the participation levels?
This is a good group. I like it. Getting lots of ideas. Yeah, that's good stuff. Okay. What do you think, Kathy? A lot of people put some pretty great stuff in there. Okay. Sorry, I was just reading and thinking about different ideas. Now, am I right? So we've got 2 Stuart Mackenzies in this group, is that right?
Yes, we do, with the exact same spelling.
This is incredible.
It is, because we've never had 2 of the exact same name.
How do I even mark their assignments?
Well, I've already told them they're getting prizes, because if one Stuart answers, I don't know which Stuart answers. I put them both in.
Good fun. Okay. Let's have a chat about some of the things and answers that came in. Well, first of all, well done. Great input, great thinking. I love it. There's obviously a bit of experience in the virtual room we've got here. People seem to know a few things, and they've got good reasons and ideas and understanding what's going on. And quite a few people did gravitate towards that signalisation. And then a few people were toying with that idea of roundabout. Some people knew immediately that a roundabout was just going to be super expensive because of the size it would need to be and the like. So that was interesting. Then we had some people talking about some other different tweaks. So wanting to close off service lanes, and that's fine. The one I was talking about, a seagull, for those who don't know sort of what a seagull intersection is, it's kind of that idea generally. So, a vehicle could come out here and accelerate down there and go in. Seagulls are really interesting, fascinating intersection treatment to analyze. And there's some New Zealanders who just really did a whole lot of work on it. They generally aren't a great performing safety one, but I mean, from a safe system assessment perspective, you've got this really good impact angle here, which is, from a vectors perspective, from an energy management perspective, that's good. But the issue down here with this one is a merge from the right, which means that, especially like old people really struggle to turn their head in that fashion. Articulated vehicles, you can't look through your cabin. So you need to have it long enough to get some good acceleration going. Plus, we still retain really bad angle crashes here on this part of it. So on balance, they don't tend to perform that well. The New Zealanders showed some circumstances where they're much better than others, but in fact, they produced the Seagull intersection assessment tool, which is like a complex spreadsheet where you put all these variables in and it tells you what your intersection risk score would be with a seagull or not a seagull, which if you ever get in that position, it'd be worth having a look at. But I did like the idea there of trying to think about angles and the like. Okay, we had some people quite interested in pedestrians and cyclists, and I think that's fantastic that we're starting to think about pedestrians and cyclists from the get-go, because often sometimes forgotten. I think people were starting to toy with the idea there of, could we put pedestrians through this? There was a question about creating a new one next to it, like a dedicated one, which but maybe we could go through there, the drainage structure. Now, funnily enough, I'm not that against using drainage structures for cyclists and pedestrians. Yes, you've got to think about some personal safety stuff, because it's people are often very worried about going through those areas, especially at night. And well, thinking how does it get managed when it is filled with water? And this one probably not quite appropriate, but often, like I think Bendigo in Victoria is just a wonderful example of the utilisation of their drainage and creek network and all of the road bridges and different drainage bits and pieces where they have been able to utilize that for bike paths to be grade separated. And that, that alters the exposure to crashes. So always looking for those opportunities. And TMR has a wonderful document on how to do that, how to use your different structures, drainage structures or bridge structures or like for shared paths or underpasses and the like. So it's worth a look, and it dispels a lot of the immediate concerns people have. It's like, oh, you can't do that. People will drown and those sort of things. Well, no, they're not going to go in there if it's full of water, and you can do have alternate routes set up and those sort of things. So that's nice. It's people talking about moving the bus stop, which would reduce the chance of a crash, so the likelihood. So if this is another good example of clarifying exposure and likelihood. So if we've got the bus stop here, and I don't know, we take it and we put it down here for some reason. If you think that that's a better place, then that's fair enough. Some people want to say that would remove exposure to crashes. So no, it'll reduce the likelihood of crashes. You can absolutely still crash with a bus exiting if it's down here or if it's here. So we just call that a reduction in the likelihood. People wanted to alter speed limits and maybe use other features to try to get speed changes. So we would talk about speed as a reduction in the likelihood and severity of crash. Okay, you get both of those for things that change speed. Now, how effective they'll be. So a speed limit reduction has some effect, just like dragon's teeth will have some effect. Are they substantial effects? Probably not. You need your road environment to sort of complement this from a physical infrastructure perspective if you want to see the sort of more significant reductions. All right, let me move through some slides to talk about this more, and we'll come back to this intersection, but I do want to come through a few things. So traffic signals, we think about as reducing the likelihood of the chance of it. Now, so people approaching signals may, a red signal may run the red light. Okay, and it actually happens far more often than what one might think. Now, some of them may see the red light and brake hard and crash, but be crashing at a lower speed because the signals were there. Yep, but we still have a lot of possibility for just the crash to happen as severe as it was without signals, and in fact, sometimes even a little bit more severe due to people putting the foot down to try to get through before the red. So we solely attribute road safety benefit from signals to reduction in the likelihood of crashes. People may say, okay, but people aren't exposed to crashes when there's a red. Well, under a safe system assessment, the thinking is that you're still exposed to it. You reduce the likelihood of it happening because we're telling people to stop at different points in time. Okay, so I picked a random part. I did pick out of metropolitan Melbourne, and I just heat mapped very quickly the death and serious injury. This is very easy to do. You can do it in pretty much any jurisdiction very quickly these days with this publicly available software. And obviously, the more intense the spot here, the more death and serious injury. Signalized intersection, signalized intersection, signalized, signalized, signalized. In fact, they're all signalized. Like, I don't even need to tell you where a signalized intersection because it's got a hotspot of death or serious injury on it. And you sort of think, what's going on there? Well, there is a degree of exposure to this. They've got so much traffic probably that they were signalized because of the amount of traffic, and They are in the outer suburban area, so we've got higher speeds. But the idea that the set of traffic signals is a road safety feature that gets us sort of where our aspirations are of almost elimination of death or serious injury is just not true. And it's really important, I think, to understand that because, I mean, Professor Jeremy Woolley out of CASA at one point said during the inquiry into the national road safety numbers that traffic signals are the biggest failure of traffic engineers, which I think was a pretty provocative statement, but he was doing it to highlight the fact that people will often see signalisation as the ultimate spot to get to with an intersection. And, well, maybe grade separation way off down the track or something like that. But, it goes through this evolution of passive control, giveways, stop signs, then it goes up to maybe a roundabout, and then the volume goes up and then it gets signalised. And however, we know that when it's at a roundabout, and we're talking just passenger vehicles here at these outer suburban ones, we know that roundabout is the safest performing. In fact, we've used crash reduction factors, as many of you do, and that's the amount of death or serious injury and sometimes other injury that you reduce as a result of putting in this treatment. And if we go from an intersection that has give way signs only, and we put a roundabout in, I mean, we will expect somewhere in the range, somewhere about 80% reduction in trauma. Now, it depends on a lot of factors, where it is, what are your volumes of peds and cyclists and other things, but that's generally 80% reduction. For a set of traffic signals, 45% reduction. Again, there's some variability to it, but that's generally what we see. This 80% is because we reduce the severity. We slow all the vehicles coming in here, and we have better crash angles if they do crash. And it's the severity reduction. Roundabouts often get quite a few minor crashes, so we don't tend to give it that likelihood reduction. That changes the types of crashes, a lot more rear ends and some other little bits and pieces, but they're so beneficial in terms of reduction in trauma. For passenger vehicles. We'll talk about cyclists and pedestrians at roundabouts in our next module. But why do we need to be that big? And I just gave you like why do we need to have these massive ones? And so many of us immediately dismiss a roundabout at that other location. We just go, no, it's just going to cost an absolute bomb. Like, look at the size of this one. It's huge. Well, you need it that big usually because you've got large vehicles and they need to turn around. They need to make that turn, and their swept path is big. And so that's one of the reasons. You also, want to make it big enough so vehicles approaching actually do slow down. But it's interesting to look at some of these other jurisdictions around the world, and some of this is done in Australia and New Zealand. But the idea of these sort of mini roundabouts, and you look at that and you go, well, what benefit is it actually doing? I mean, it's nothing. Well, it actually does a surprising amount of benefit. And the big reason it does a surprising amount of benefit is because everybody approaching this, or sorry, I should say nobody approaching this, believes they have ultimate priority. And thus they slow down and they look around and they wake up. And that can be it's a huge win in road safety. But the idea of ultimate priority, be that a red light, a green light scenario, or a give way sign of light, that one vehicle is just going through at speed, really not concentrating and looking around that much, is quite problematic for road safety at this point of a lot of conflict and a lot of risk. So these are kind of the UK equivalent of the American four-way stop scenario. And you're just disrupting any individual's assumption of priority. You can complement these with, platforms to slow vehicles down even further if there's that issue of straight line, fast running, and being concerned with that. So there's some pretty exciting features there. So, road safety engineering 101 here, but conflict point analysis, which is basically the dot where you can have a conflict. Passenger vehicle to passenger vehicle, I'm talking about here, just passenger vehicle to passenger vehicle. As I mentioned, we'll talk about peds and cyclists next. Roundabout has less conflict points than a signalised intersection. The conflict points that remain are very, I suppose, friendly in one sense, or they are friendlier in one sense. They're not those harsh angles. So that's got a benefit. The angle of impact is far better at roundabouts than at traffic signals. And as I mentioned there, people sort of wake up. There's a huge amount of people that drive straight through a red light, and they are just not with it. They're half asleep. They're intoxicated. They're thinking about the fight they had with their partner. The list could just go on and on. However, if you put a big lump of infrastructure in the middle of that intersection, they wake up and they come back to reality and they look around and they slow down. They're back with it. So it's an amazing feature from a road safety perspective, a roundabout. I suppose actually it does remind me, Kathy, of something that I worked on a while back when I was at Vic Roads in the road safety department, and I'll try and dig it out actually. It tells a little bit of a story. So I was in the road safety department, and there was a big Australia's biggest ever congestion easing program going on in Melbourne at the time, and it's some big thing. I think it was called Keep Melbourne Moving. I think it was called. So it was the traffic engineers that analysed the network and looking for areas that were causing traffic snarls, and then there was this astronomical investment by government to ease congestion, and so off they went. All these projects came in, and a huge bulk of these projects were to take away roundabouts out of the outer suburban area and replace them with traffic signals, because the roundabouts couldn't handle the capacity of traffic that the signals could, and there were issues with unbalanced flows at some of the roundabouts and all sorts of bits and pieces. So it's also an ability to sort of use your SCAT system and others to manage traffic. Anyway, so the process was that the regions were developing these projects, and they were submitting them in for a variety of checks along the way, and they would come to my area, and we would do the road safety review of it, and check that everything was good. And what they were expecting was that we would be checking, is the phasing right, line marking right, signage right, the all these bits and pieces. But we started to put these memos, and I did find it, by the way. So we started to put these memos on projects. We looked at all the signs and line marking, and did that proper review. But we created these memos. I don't know, Kathy, if you're seeing. I think you should be seeing that by now. Yeah. So interoffice memo. Road safety department. Yeah, here we go. The road safety department has analysed this project as increasing crashes as follows. Project life. You've got to give a project life to do a lot of calculations in different things. But anyway, number of deaths attributed to this project, 2.3. We put little people to remind them they were going to kill people. Number of serious injuries attributed to this project, 12.6. And oh yeah, statement of acceptance. The above road trauma is accepted by, and then sent that back on top of the project design, and with then all of our notes on other bits and pieces. So it's an interesting exercise for a number of reasons. One, because you then get shouted at by the exec director and people for not understanding the complexities of managing a road network and the responsibility to balance this and that and things like that, which you just got to sometimes boil things down to somebody standing up and making a decision about this. The one though, I suppose, that's interesting nowadays is that a safe system assessment kind of does this in a much more, I suppose, palatable way compared to that. Although I think sometimes this is needed to spark a bit of change. Right. Now, hang on, where was I? Kathy, are you still there? I think you are.
Yes, I am, Ken, and I imagine you got asked to leave. Is that why you started your own company?
No. I retained my job, thank you.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Yeah. And we saw some improvements as a result of this, but we unfortunately there were a lot of those roundabouts removed to replace with traffic signals, and they're potentially some of those hotspots that I showed you. Now, not to say there wouldn't have been any death and serious injury at the roundabouts, but it would have been less. It's a tough gig managing a road network. Okay, so putting that aside, let's roundabouts actually are interesting in their own right to analyze which roundabouts sort of are the best from a road safety perspective and the like. And I put this up a bit for your interest in a bit because, well, yeah. So dual lane roundabouts start to perform not that well as the radius of the roundabout gets smaller, and yeah, 3-lane roundabouts even worse. Turbo roundabouts perform really quite well, and they are a 2-lane roundabout. So here's a turbo roundabout, and you can see it is a 2-lane roundabout, but what it's got is this interesting raised separator on the approach and a raised separator through the circulating carriageway and on exit. So you want to turn right, you've got to get in that right lane, and you get in there and you go around and off you go. So that the reason of that performance is so good, or better than the normal 2-lane roundabout, is because it eliminates that ability for that straight line, fast speed through. It also eliminates, or pretty much eliminates, the ability for that turning over. So, somebody here and then somebody turning over them there and all of that sort of stuff. And anyway, so turbo roundabout's pretty good. And this one's, to me, is just a wonderful picture. It's a nice turbo roundabout, but what's going on here is great. This truck has obviously made a mistake, right? They've entered the intersection. It's not their time to enter. But look at the angle we've got. That's going to be friendly. We know that, right? We also know that this white van or whatever it is going to be going slow, isn't it? I mean, this is a typical European radial roundabout. Look at the sort of radial roundabout. In Australia, we'd tangential that around, so they'd be going a bit faster. But nonetheless, yeah, I think just angles and speeds, and we know that's going to be friendly. If it had been a set of traffic signals and that truck had made a mistake, okay, they're less likely to make a mistake, definitely. But if they had, come out and then the van was traveling at 70 or so, we're going to have a hugely severe incident. I put this up. This is just fun. It's a turbo roundabout in the Netherlands, and I was talking to a Dutch engineer about this, and they were out in Australia. And we were doing some stuff on cyclists roundabouts with them. I said, yeah, this is fascinating to me. Like in Australia, this would like be probably be a large signalised intersection until it gets grade separated at some point. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, with speed calming. I'm like, nah, probably, operating 270-kilometre or 80-kilometre per hour roads, or an 80 and a 60. And he just couldn't fathom that. But what about all the death and serious injury to the community? It's like, yeah, that's right. I agree. And just the mindset and the philosophy that you'd rather do something like this, and look at the land take on this. It's just huge, and it looks complex. I think ground level, I haven't driven it, but I would imagine it's much easier at ground level. It's signalised as well. But yeah, everybody slows down. All the crash angles are better, rather than hoping that everybody follows the red light. But it's nice to see that Australians are starting to look at the large signalised intersections and say what could be done to give us some of the characteristics that we need in order to get better safe system alignment. And we see the cut through style roundabouts, which this hasn't been built. This is a mock-up. I think this would be great. But again, what you're doing is you're slowing vehicles down. You're improving crash angles. The fact that they won't be half asleep and drive straight through this. Well, it's very occasional somebody does run straight into a roundabout, but so rare. So that one hasn't been built. But these are trying to address the severity of crash. And I was really excited to see people starting to put raised safety platforms in as an option at that intersection we were looking at, your little exercise there, because certainly when I started, in fact, even 10 years ago, if I'd been in a design office and I'd said, what about, that major arterial, or that arterial, we've got 20,000 vehicles a day and bus route and heavy vehicle route. Why don't we look at vertical deflection, like something raised? You just be kicked out of the office, or laughed at least. Because the theory was that you don't put vertical deflection on arterial roads. I mean, they're the pumping traffic through, or vehicles through, or maybe cyclists through. But that's changed. That's changing, and it's changed. And we can see there that the intersection we were looking at, well, that was the idea. And some of you sort of playing around with that, raising the intersection, maybe some raised platforms. And that was their idea to put traffic signals, which they realised, well, it's consistent with up the road and down the road, gives us better control over stuff, gives some pedestrian crossing points as well. And they sort of said, yeah, well, signals are obvious. But then they were great in the fact that they said, what about the severity of crash? Can we do anything about that? We reduce the speed limit. People don't, ignore that. What about we look at raised platforms on this? And that's what they progressed with. Now, why are they only on this bit and this bit? And you can't see back here. There's no raised platform back here. Well, the reason for that is that these are the bullet vehicles, right? The vehicle coming out and the vehicle going, they're target vehicles, right? So we're just trying to address the bullet vehicle speed and get that down to a level. Now, they were predominantly concerned with vehicle-to-vehicle crashes. The intersection up the road was all vehicle-to-vehicle crashes. The intersection down the road, the existing crash history, this one was vehicle-to-vehicle crashes. So that's what they were looking at. So what speed do you think they designed the platforms here to try to get vehicles to that speed or below? Pop that in the chat. Vehicle-to-vehicle crashes. All right, Mark's on it. Mark gets the prize there, 50. He was the first in with 50. And the reason for 50 is that we know the side impact, right angle crash speed that we are aiming for, that or below, is 50, where we know there's a high chance of survival for those involved in that crash. So these are not kind of like urban speed humps. I mean, these are raised safety platforms. They have a shallower angle. You can alter them based on what you want to get. So you can see here it is, built. Okay, advisory 50s. I'll show another picture of it. There's another picture of it, advisory 50s. So what we're doing here is giving likelihood reduction from the signals, severity reduction by getting the speed down here with the platform. Now, these are like speed humps in the sense that people slow down before them. You're not using the hump for people to hit and somehow dampen their speed. People see it, they slow down, and then they navigate over it. And that's why it's close to the intersection there. I love this picture for a number of reasons. I was out there with a colleague doing the post-opening road safety audit, or doing one of the post-opening road safety audits. I think I had a few. Why do I love this picture? It's green lights, but this person's braking and slowing down to go through this point we know is a conflict point. And now some people get really frustrated about this. Usually they're the traffic operations stalwarts, and they're like, well, this is just not efficient. Like, why are we doing this? And I said, well, if we'd put a roundabout in there, everybody would slow down every time. Like, what? So why are we angry about this this scenario? And it's because it's different. It's not what we would traditionally do. And people don't like that change. But pretty awesome. And this one I love as well. This was an interesting sort of supplementary finding or extra benefit. The dilemma zone reduces when you put a raised platform in significantly. So the dilemma zone is that it's a traffic engineering term. It's a point in sort of time and space where you are in a dilemma as a driver, whether you put the foot down or you brake. Pretty great naming of a concept, I think, the dilemma zone. And this one just reduces the dilemma zone significantly, because people in the majority of the dilemma zone now just brake because they're going to have to navigate over something. And we're starting to see this on a lot of high volume roads now across Victoria, New Zealand. I know there's a lot of interest out of Queensland and a bit of interest out of New South Wales as well. And this one particularly makes me happy. And I'll explain why. Because it is part of another congestion easing program. And you know what used to be there? A roundabout. And the roundabout was decided the roundabout must be removed because we can get better capacity through here of vehicles. This road down here has 55,000 vehicles a day or something. This one's got like 30,000. This road's got 30,000 vehicles a day. And these are big, decent carrying of whack traffic. It's got major bus routes, the emergency vehicle route, the ambulances and things go up and down there. Yet when the roundabout was being removed, a safe system assessment was carried out, and the safe system assessment, as I said before, did in a much more palatable way showed them that they just do that, they will increase death and serious injury. Yes, they'll get better capacity, but they will kill and seriously injure some of our community to do that. And that's not what we want to be doing, obviously. And so a raised safety platform was included. So I think that just shows you the win of safe system assessments. It shows you as safe system assessors, which you will be shortly, the kind of stuff you can be suggesting that they look at, and we can be bold, and we can suggest this. Now, if they're not ready to to use this at this stage, okay. But we should be, as safe system assessors, pushing things to slow vehicles down through these sorts of intersections. And there's now quite a bit of information about race safety platforms at signalised intersections. There's a good road design note for the Victorians or others who want to jump on and have a look at it, 0307, and Austroads has released their document, Effectiveness and Implementation of Race Safety Platforms. There has been a comprehensive evaluation just released as well around 7 major seven raised intersections and raised safety platform signalised intersections on major arterials, which shows wonderful benefits. This one is a New Zealand example. So yeah, I suppose I'm not saying that these are the be all and end all, but I'm saying that we need to be thinking in that energy management and addressing the severity as well as the likelihood. Right, Kathy, what do you reckon? Well, let's have a stretch, a little bit of a break.
Yes, let's do it. Sounds good, Ken. Thank you. What have we got? 3 minutes?
3 minutes. Yeah, we got a bit to cover still.
Okay, and there's a question that's come in. Do throw your questions in during the break if you like, and then we can come back to them. Yeah, there's 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Okay. At the 50K advisory, what are the implications for a faster moving vehicle?
Yeah, so okay, raised intersections are an interesting one in the sense of, again, if you get a road safety audit done on a raised intersection, the nature of the road safety audit is and has to be, what are the risks? That is what an auditor is meant to do, not what are the benefits, right? And the risks are like that they identify are often as long as your arm. Like, yeah, okay, so the concerns people had before the first one was built on any sort of speed road was like people are going to hit it and they're going to like dukes of hazard, fly off into the roadside. Every heavy vehicle that turns is going to roll over. That motorcyclists will be instantly killed, cyclists, buses, all the bus passengers every time they go off will bounce off, and that all of the freight will be damaged every time a truck goes through. Right, and I mean they're all reasonable things to ask, aren't they? But when your road safety audit comes back and just lists all of that, it's very hard. So this is where the safe system assessment again is a better tool at early stages to show, look at the benefits that will be achieved, right? Okay, and here's some things might need to think about. And the evaluations and things have not shown any of that. So vehicles slow down. The ramp grades potentially on that Surf Coast Kidman one we used as the example they're not as harsh as they probably could and should be, but I would say that your first one in a jurisdiction, if you're going to go anything, go too shallow, because if you go too harsh and it's a real jolt for people, then you probably compromise any future rollouts because of that. So there's been some refining and they're getting better. Yeah, none of those issues have come through. Noise was another one. People are like, imagine living in those houses and you're just going to have so much noise. Well, it's not proven to be significantly different. In fact, a couple of the sites have had less noise because of the surfacing that had to change and so it reduced it. Anyway.
There's a great webinar, Austroads webinar on race safety platforms that I've also just popped into Moodle under module 2, but I'll show you towards the end. So that's there if you want to. And there was another question just about, were you supposed to have a USB in the box? We did used to give USBs, but then basically we put everything online. So everything is available in the learning management system, and you can download anything from there. And because we do add things along the way as we go, we just thought it would be better to give you the latest and greatest right here.
Yeah, and you can add links to webinars and things easily and nicely, which is what you've just done.
Thanks.
Okay. Another quick one I'm not going to spend as much time on. I just like people's thinking around energy management. And so here's an intersection. It's a high-speed intersection. It's a more rural environment this time. And they look at it and they go, oh, well, we'd like a roundabout here because we're concerned there's been crash history, but there's also just the risk. And then they start to look at a roundabout and they're, going, oh my God, we need that much area there. And then I was in Victoria, so we're going to do reverse curves. So we're taking up all of this land and this land. And it just became so massive. This is a Telstra exchange thing, which was going to cost like $1 million in its own right to move, and all the land acquisition, everything like that. So the traditional approach here would be just to say, well, we can't do that. So let's do, right turn treatments and some lighting improvements and sort of just tinkering away at the likelihood. But again, this region was able to sort of say, well, what about a smaller roundabout? And instead of us, using a lot of the traditional features to lower speeds, we have a crack at some raised treatments as well. So I'm using raised treatments a lot here, but it's the principle of slowing people in using physical measures. It could be horizontal, it could be vertical. So yeah, very small roundabout, big concrete apron around it to cater for that swept path. And yeah, I think it came out really well. It was about half the cost, or a little bit under half the cost. And you can see there the shallow raised platform. There's another raised bit, small there, and so a large vehicle will sort of sweep over that. And yeah, we've just released the compact roundabout road design note for anybody that would like all the details, because there's a huge amount of thinking to go into this, like, well, drainage, where do you put your lighting? You can't put it in the middle of the roundabout anymore. Where do you, what sizes are acceptable? Signage, approach speeds, ramp grades, angles, you name it. It's all interesting stuff. But I do want to do a little quick quiz, and again, remind you, you're not being marked on this one, but I think it's only maybe one question. Is it one question, Kathy? I don't know. There it is. It is just the one question. True or false? Traffic signals are not safe systems. True, false, or unintelligible question. Meaning that I don't really. That's a stupid question, Ken. It's what are you? You're not giving us information, and it doesn't make any sense. Now, Kathy, while people are casting their votes here, just wanted to check that we will have the assignment ready to show people through in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. All good to go.
Thank you. Give it a second or two more. Just a few. Maybe it hasn't popped up on a few people's screen due to firewalls or the like.
New South Wales. I'm in that now, and here we go.
Okay, so a couple of people on true, lots of people saying false, some people saying unintelligible question. Well, it really could be any, depending on the context you put over it. And unintelligible questions are pretty decent response because for a couple of reasons. First of all, we don't talk about safe system as this binary concept anymore. Like something has alignment with safe system principles. So either that is safe system, that's not. It's more that, yeah, that aligns well with safe system principles. That doesn't align well. False is a decent answer too, because it's not the traffic signals themselves that have, particular alignment with safe system principles. It's the context in which they're in. So I can understand that. And true, yeah, if you had in your mind high-speed signalized intersections without any speed calming, I can understand that as well. So how about we say everybody's a winner? Thanks. But I did want to put that in there because occasionally people go out of this course and have this real, like, you couldn't possibly ever put a set of traffic signals in anywhere. I'm like, that's not what I was trying to say. It's about thinking about the energy and the fact that people will fail at these points and how do we manage that failure. And a few key points in there that are in the notes if you want to sort of get the summary. Lane departure. Okay, so the mid-block style crashes. Now, here's a length of road. You don't know where it is. It's long. It's generally straight. It's divided by a white line. It's got some sealed shoulders, and it's got an occasional overtaking lane and the occasional sort of minor access point and intersection, some roadsides in the trees. That's about all I need. Oh, it's 100 kilometers per hour. And what type of crashes are we seeing along here that are resulting in death or serious injury? Pop it into the chat. Any ideas? Yep. Great. Okay. So everybody seems to know it. It's a single vehicle and it's lane departure and either crossing the center line, head-ons, running off the road, and there's a lot of death and serious injury. A lot of them are people falling asleep. Yes, that's right. Landers worried about Wally crossing the road.
Did put a wombat
at 40 kilometers per hour.
And that's how easy it is to get a prize for you, Lander.
Lander gets a prize. I think it's good. It's quite fun.
Yeah, swerving to miss the wombat.
Yeah. And that's it. Like, we know that we have an astronomical amount of road network at a speed, operating at a speed where we need drivers to stay in their lane, not leave their lane. Otherwise, the energies are far beyond what they can handle. And yeah, we know that if we're talking about fixed hazards like the trees, power poles, we know we're talking around that 29 kilometer, 32 kilometer, maybe up to 40 with some really, great side impact technology vehicles and the like. But it's so far beyond what vehicles are traveling at along these roads. And as they leave the road, they tend to yaw, and yawing is when they fall asleep on this road. They drift off into the shoulder because the road kind of is a little bit angled that way, and drains them out. And then they wake up in the roadside and they absolutely panic, as anybody would, and they jerk the wheel back to get on the road, and we see the yawing begin. There's less yawing these days with electronic stability control and things like that, but yawing is the sideways sliding, exposing the side of the vehicle to these rigid point source hazards. Just to show you some of the violence and energy involved in this. This is This was predicted to be a 60-kilometre-per-hour impact with a pole. This shows you the sort of forces that we're dealing with. I mean, that's just incredible, the violence in that, and the energy transfer, and it's unsurvivable stuff. And that's just estimated at 60. So anybody who does a lot of the crash investigations in your area will attest to this. If you have high-speed roads and power poles and trees and things like that, that they just absolutely obliterate vehicles at high speed. So the thought that, okay, well, we could remove all the trees, couldn't we? And the power poles, and that would solve everything. And that's been a sort of thought in the past. If we clear out all of this stuff, there's nothing to hit. Now, that's right. That lessens the risk, absolutely. But this is interesting research out of, well, 3 organizations did this research all at once, actually, in different spots, and came out with generally similar outcomes. That you see that as you create cleared area, we'll call it clear zone, although clear zone has specific, if you're, I don't want to go into calculating clear zones at this stage, but cleared area, we'll call this, from the edge line out. You see that run-off road casualty crashes per 100 million VKT, vehicle kilometres travelled, which is your measure of exposure, comes down, but then it sort of asymptotes out at around that 4. And that's because vehicles are going beyond this and hitting stuff, but they're also rolling over in these cleared spaces now. They're still yawing and they roll over. So we've got a new sort of risk emerging. So what we know about sort of clear zones is that wide clear zone areas free of roadside hazard are not necessarily a safe place to be because of that going beyond that and rollover risk. Wider clear zones that don't have the highest safe system alignment. And the practical nature is that they're just ridiculously hard to achieve. Clear zone sort of stuff, like clearing trees and things, is just not on anymore. You get some pretty good crash reduction in the first few meters of it, but it sort of lessens after that. So there used to be a time when we would, design a new town bypass or major highway upgrade, and it kind of looked like this to a degree, which would be a big wide median in the middle. You calculated clear zone out, and then you do all your planting of trees out there. You probably wouldn't have that there. That looks like they've probably grown since it's yeah, and that would really be it. Probably not these truck rumble strips, but oh, sorry, Kathy. The thing with this is we know that vehicles will leave the road, they will end up in those trees, and they do. And we know that vehicles will go over that and potentially strike vehicles coming the other way. And it is, super tragic to see this, and especially when we build, multi-billion-dollar, or often many hundreds of millions, sometimes $1 billion upgrades of roads, town bypasses, whole new freeways, motorway style, not motorway, highway style things with these big wide medians and these, and then within months of it opening, people die. And there's, been instances where vehicles have run across a big wide median and, had a head on with a family and most of them killed. And you go, this is just amazing that we would build that huge infrastructure investment and then just sort of go, death and serious injury is part of having a road network. So the new part 6, Australia's Guide to Road Design, starts to alter our way of looking at roadside risk, which is good. And I'm not going to go into the details of it because that's 3 days worth of training in its own right. But we know we're getting higher alignment with safe system principles with continuous barrier systems, center and outside. And that's a little mock-up we were doing for some other stuff, but I thought I'd pop that in there. And I've got lots of series of sort of high-level cross-sections. I'm not saying this is the cross-section to build. Actually, I put these in just to show you that you got a 4-star cross-section, star rating, like your star rate a fridge for energy efficiency. We can star rate roads for their safety. 4-star for now, this big, wide, cleared median. 5-star for when you're able to put a barrier and a barrier and a barrier and some reasonable offsets, and you see that as a safer outcome, a better aligned safe system. You don't need to acquire as much land as well. That's a good thing. You probably don't need to cut down as many trees. So we're seeing lots of benefits. Anyway, I got a lot of those in there and the like. There's lots of details around implementation, how you implement, what are your offsets for barriers, how do you cater for broken down vehicles and providing pullover areas, which barrier system to use, what other tweaks and bits and pieces can you adjust in there. I won't get into all of that now. I think community sentiment's an important one, and understanding where the community sits and ensuring that we have community buy-in on this. And some of you have been no doubt involved in those projects. This one's an interesting one, and I bring it up again just to talk about energy management. And it's been a real theme of today is managing energy. And this is a crash that happened in Mildura. And it was one of those all too common scenarios of 4 young males in this Ford old car going at high speed in the wee hours of the morning. And they went into a roundabout. Now, I've just talked up roundabouts as amazing. And well, they've gone in fast, very fast, and lost control, navigating the roundabout and run off the road and hit a power pole. A good thing about roundabouts actually is that anybody else that was coming up would have looked around and possibly seen them. And anyway, they've hit that power pole. The power pole had a Raptor cushion on it. Now, a Raptor cushion is this device, which sort of crumples on impact, but it also rotates when struck, and it's a way of sort of managing energy in a different way. I think it's pretty exciting, the thinking again around managing energy. So as the vehicle hits it, it sort of rotates, pushes the vehicle aside, or it crumples a bit as well, and we're managing energy again. And those 4 occupants all survived, only minor injuries, and they're leading a normal, healthy life. Well, I don't actually know they're leading a normal, healthy life. Their injuries, they were, noted as only minor injuries, so I can only assume that. But I think, again, it's just us continually looking for how to manage energy, how to manage mistakes. Gee, we don't want them to be driving like that, and we don't want them to be in cars with little safety features like this, and we want all sorts of things not to have happened. But when they do happen, we want to try and be able to manage energy in this way. I don't know if we even have another quiz there, Kathy. I think we might have deleted that out to save us a little bit of time to talk about the assignment, but maybe not.
Yes, yep, that's right.
Okay, so mid-block, there's some key summary points which I'll put into your notes, which you can get out of the learning management system. And it's about this point, I think, we stop, check if there's any questions that I need to deal with. And next session, we're going to talk about the vulnerable road users, pedestrian cyclists and motorcyclists, and off the fair bit of stuff there. But I think, how we go? Any people want me to talk to anything? No.
Not just yet, Ken, but what I'll do is just alert you to the assignment. I think we're good here. So thank you to everyone who's jumped in and done your module 1 quiz. So if you haven't, there it is there. So do jump in and do that. The recordings after each session will be in their respective module folder. So there's the recording from earlier this week. So there's a couple of things in here. That webinar I talked about, the Austroads one, that guidance document, effectiveness and implementation of road safety platforms. And you also talked about the compact roundabouts design note that I've also popped in there as well.
Great.
So you click onto the assignment, and what you do is you open that up. There it is, I prepared earlier. And for this particular one, what you can do is you pick your intersection, any intersection, something that you're disappointed with or something that's just local to you and you have some safety concerns, and you fill out the highlighted section. So there's a theme when it comes to assignments, and that is if you see a section that's highlighted, that's what you complete. So you pop in your name and you do a street view link to your intersection. So we can also have a look at the intersection. And you don't actually have to go out and see it. You can do it all from the comfort of your computer. And basically what you do is inspect it via street view. And what we're looking for you to get a good understanding of at this stage is the factors that increase exposure to crashes, likelihood and severity, and then things that can be done to reduce each of those. So here we go here over the second page. Ken, do you want to give us some examples? Sorry, you've had your drink of water.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, as Kathy said there, pick an intersection. For this one, we're not going to get you to go out to it and look around. Certainly for safe system assessments, we always like you to go out there, but this is more just practicing categorization. And really, this is what we're marking you on, is can you correctly categorize things into exposure, likelihood, and severity? And so you might look at the intersection and say, well, exposure, well, it's very high volume road. It has a lot of pedestrians crossing on it. These are exposure factors. It's the main link to the shopping centre, and there's lots of pedestrians crossing from the bus stop across to the shopping centre. And there's but within that, we would really want to be seeing you say something about the volumes, the numbers, something that's influencing the numbers, and say that high volume, that's the sort of stuff we want. And then you're into the likelihood, and you'd be looking at things that influence the likelihood. So that could be, well, the signs are confusing, the line marking's faded, the lighting, there's no lighting, anything like that. And then severity is going to be down to a few things that can really influence severity. And it's got to be speed, it's got to be angles, it's got to be vulnerability of users involved. So if you look at your intersection, you go, well, there's actually a lot of old people using this intersection. Well, they're more vulnerable. It'll be more severe if an incident occurs with them there. Heavy vehicles, obviously more mass, so there'll be more severity with them. So you've got to thinking kind of about physics and biomechanics down that end. And then you go through and you fill out 3 of those based on what you're looking at. 1 to 3, didn't we say? So if you can only find 1, that's all right. Accept that. 1 to 3. And then you go through and you go, right, now I can change one thing, just like you were doing for our little exercise today. But this time you're not constrained by budgets or other limitations or the like. You simply can put anything you want that would influence the exposure to crashes. It would change the exposure to crashes, reduce the exposure to crashes. And then the same for likelihood and the same for severity. It could be like, exposure, you close off roads, do an overpass, anything like that. Or you somehow restrict numbers or change numbers somehow or another, do a bypass, a diversion, or something like this. Likelihood, you're going to, you know, change signs, fix signs, signalize it, fix the lighting up, provide better pavement surface, anything like that. Severity is going to be that you, improve speed, angles, vulnerability of users through any mechanisms you want, roundabouts, raised platforms, barrier systems, any energy management type devices, or other ways to influence severity. So there you go, Kathy. We've given a lot of help there. We don't usually give this much help to people at this stage.
So just thinking back there a little bit, Ken, if you talked about, say, exposure, you know, I don't know, closing road, it doesn't necessarily have to be something that is likely to happen. Is that right? Because I guess, you know, building an overpass or something like that doesn't matter whether or not it will happen. You're not limited by budget. You can do anything you want here.
Learning objective,
yes,
and we're testing a learning objective here,
okay,
is do participants know what categorizes as exposure, as likelihood, as severity?
okay.
We happen to do it around an existing real world intersection so that there's something to look at. We will look at the intersection in the sense of it's almost out of interest, and also we might make a few comments around, you know, actually this is more of a concern or something like that, but we won't take marks off for that. That's more just it's real world learning. Basically, if you categorize things right, doesn't matter how extreme they may be or you know, impossible to ever do for one reason or another, as long as it's categorized right, you'll get the marks.
Great. So once
when's it due?
What? When's it
due?
Oh, Sunday afternoon, maybe even Monday morning. It just gives you, Ken, a bit of an opportunity to have a look at them before our next session on Tuesday. Now, it's not something that should, you know, take very long. What are you suggesting for this, Ken? 20 minutes, half an hour at the most? Or
half an hour at the most, yeah.
We could finish up shortly, and then people might be able to do it.
I was going to say we've pretty much covered what we wanted to this session. I would say that if we stop talking soon, they will be able to do their quiz and this assignment before official end time. We did want to allocate a bit of time for people to get back on track and answer any questions, but it looks like this group's pretty happy with where we're at from question perspective. So maybe they will just get a little bit of time to jump in. And how do you upload it?
Yep, and then you just click add submission and you drag and drop your file there, so you can look at all the things I've got open. So you can just pick it up and you pop it in there and you save, and it's good to go. And if you've got any dramas or anything like that, just flick me an email and I'll make it happen.
And if you're able to PDF it, that's very preferable to us at the marking end. We will survive with a Word document, but we do like the PDF if possible.
We do. Okay. Any last questions or comments or anything?
All right. Use this bit of time wisely.
Okay.
Knock off the quiz, which shouldn't take you long, and get into that assignment. If you're struggling, shoot out an email to Kathy and myself, and we'll organise a little one-on-one coaching if you need, but hopefully with what you've got, you'll be able to exposure, likelihood, severity, any intersection, any way you want. And we will see you next week.
Lovely. Thank you, Ken. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.